Hello dears, and welcome to my show. I'm your friendly neighborhood librarian, reading the stinkers and praising the masterpieces since 2012. Okay, a few setup details since this is the pilot of the show here. This is going to be largely a book review show, though any written story counts. In the future, that may include comic books, manga, plays, movie novelizations. Oh, and if the book has been adapted into a TV series or movie, I will take a short look at those as well. Classics, modern novels, and even fan fiction. Yes, fan fiction. It is a legitimate style of storytelling, and it is also 100% free to procure. There may be spoilers in my reviews of more popular literature, and that is because I want to weigh in on specific plot points. But I will warn you in advance if there are any spoilers that creep up. So without further ado, what do we have on the lineup today? This. The Hunger Games by Suzanne Collins. And by that, I mean only The Hunger Games, not the trilogy. I have read the whole trilogy, but for time's sake, let's just stick with one book per review. I'll be doing that with any book that is part of a series. Manga being a possible exception. So, The Hunger Games. It's a hefty book to start with. With which to start? Forget it. Just because I'm your friendly neighborhood librarian does not mean that I have to be a grammar freak. All the time. But I digress. The Hunger Games is a worldwide phenomenon, selling millions of books and securing a movie deal despite being published only 5 years ago. You walk around and you can't get away from Jennifer Lawrence's soulful gaze on the front of magazines, Josh Hutchinson's beaten puppy dog look, and the guy who plays Gale. He's just there so they can capitalize on the love triangle Team So-and-so versus Team So-and-so thing. In fact, the marketing is kind of weird that way. One somber brunette with 2 men at her sides. It's very reminiscent of another book series I know. Oh yeah, in fact my whole experience with this novel is similar to my Twilight experience, and I'll tell you why, but first a little background into the story. The Hunger Games is set in the futuristic nation of Panem, which used to be North America. As for the rest of the world, we have no idea what happened to it. North America is the only important place and the only part of the world that seemingly had the wits to survive. Other countries just died out and became wastelands. I guess. It isn't even worth a quick throwaway exposition line. Panem is just the end-all be-all of the world. 3 guesses where the author's from! You know, it kind of makes me feel bad, because after all, this book is a worldwide phenomenon, meaning people from other countries do read this. I wondered if the Chinese people reading this are like, hey, I wonder what happened to China in this universe. You know? I'm sorry, I digress. Again. Panem is divided into 12 districts, who are all responsible for a certain product to be sent to the wealthy capital. For example, District 12, where our leading lady is from, produces coal. Another district produces fish, and another produces wood, and so on. And they are required to send the fruits of their labor to the capital. The capital rules the districts with an iron fist. At some point, the people in the district started thinking, oh, that's not fair, we should probably uprise or something. So they did, and they lost. And as punishment, the capital requires them to send one boy and girl tribute 18 years or younger to the annual Hunger Games, where they will be forced to fight other tributes to the death. This is a televised event that is mandatory watching for the people in the districts. The way tributes are chosen is their names are placed into a lottery and chosen randomly. Some kids put their name in more than once to receive more rations, because the people in the district live poorly and are barely scraping by. Your name gets put in once the first year you're eligible, twice the second year, and so on. Enter our protagonist Katniss Everdeen, who is 18 years old, and her sister Primrose. 'Cause those are futuristic names, you know? It's Primrose's first time with her name in the pot, and she's nervous that she'll get picked. Katniss assures her that the chances of that are slim to none, Which they are, but because of plot device reasons, Primrose's name gets picked, and so Katniss volunteers to participate in the Hunger Games in Primrose's place. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is how our story begins. Woo! Okay, so I guess I ought to talk about characters first. The main characters are Katniss Everdeen and Peeta Mellark, the boy tribute from District 12, and also, spoiler alert, Katniss's love interest. Because the premise of kids fighting each other to the death because of the whims of a dictator wasn't strong enough to stand on its own. And teens wouldn't read anything without a love story. And obviously, teenagers have the time and presence of mind to fall in love when they're worried about being killed or killing others. Katniss and Peeta are the only real characters in the story, with the possible exception of Rue, a tribute from another district, who teams up with Katniss at a certain point. Other characters you meet peripherally, and they feel more like concepts than characters. Prim, for example, is the sweet little innocent girl, the pure heart in this land of squalor and corruption. Katniss's mother makes an appearance at the beginning of this book, and she is bereaved of her husband and never really got over it. She is broken down by the system. She is a living casualty. Already in Katniss's family alone, you see a spectrum of people reacting differently to being in this situation. Then you have Gale, Katniss's best guy friend, who apparently longs to escape, taking his family and Katniss's family along with him. He is also a bit of a hothead and wants to wage war on the capital. In short, had he lived in the old days, he probably would have been one of the men leading the failed war against the capital, and indirectly causing the Hunger Games. Intriguing. But then we have Katniss herself. Interestingly, at the beginning of the story, she is ambivalent about running away or waging war on the capital. She agrees that the capital's practices are wrong, but she doesn't see any point in rebelling. She's found a way to live somewhat comfortably in the system because she has excellent archery skills which she uses to hunt, and then she in turn uses that meat for trade. And she's not personally being affected by the Hunger Games at this point in her life. And what can one person really accomplish anyway? She has this sort of defeatist attitude, which is a really interesting choice in your main protagonist, and also hits home. It reminds me a lot of the reason a lot of young people choose not to vote, for example. Nothing's going to change in this country. What will one vote do? Etc. This trait in Katniss was relatable. Peeta is less interesting. He's in love with Katniss. He threw some burnt bread at her once. Okay, seriously? Peeta is a baker, and he once saw Katniss starving out on the street, so he purposely burnt some bread. His parents made him throw it out, and he threw it towards Katniss. That's basically their backstory. Peeta plays up the romance angle in the game so that they'll get more sponsors, rich people in the capital who will send in food, medicine, water, all those good necessities. He is there to be sweet and lovable and bland. He is one of the most defined characters, but that isn't saying much, because I can define about every character in a sentence, or in some cases, a phrase. In short, the characterization is not the strongest part of this book, but there are some interesting ideas behind them.